people forget that all exercise is made up. Whether it's the barbell back squat or the dumbbell bench press or whatever your favorite exercise is, at some point that equipment did not exist and that exercise was not popular. So a lot of what we see popularized in the gym today exists because someone made it up, made it popular, shared it with their friends, and it started to gain some traction. I love the classic lifts that most people know and love today, but I think that there's a lot of less conventional or less traditional lifts that deserve a space in your programming. Some of these exercises actually come from decades ago and were popular at some point in fitness history. Others are newer creations, whether something that I've made up or something that I've found on the internet myself lately. I want to reiterate and make it very clear that I don't think you have to do all of these exercises any more than I think you have to barbell squat or have to use a leg extension machine. These are just variations that I personally love that I don't see programmed very often. Something that has been trending over the last couple of years is the concept of lengthened partials or partial range of motion training. Now, I think for the most part, it's become over-popularized or over-indexed to a degree, but I do think there's a few exercises where it works particularly well. So to kick off this video, I'm gonna show you 2 exercises that I think lend themselves really well to lengthened partial training. I'll explain why and why I probably wouldn't use it as often on most other exercises. That first exercise is just the calf raise. And why I think lengthened partials work so well on calves has to do with understanding the strength profile of a muscle, so where you're strong and where you're weak, and comparing that to the resistance profile or resistance curve, we call it, of the exercise. So when we think of most calf raises, whether it's a standing calf raise or on a machine, like I'm gonna do a leg press calf raise here, the weight or the resistance is the same throughout the entire range of motion. However, the calves in particular, you're gonna find that you're really, really strong in that lengthened position. You can handle a lot of weight in that bottom half of the range, but you'll find that it's really difficult to get all the way up onto your tiptoes and you get really weak in that position. So if you use the same weight for the entire range of motion, there's gonna be a mismatch between that strength profile and the resistance curve. You're potentially under-stimulating or under-challenging yourself in the bottom half and only really failing in that top half. So to basically address that problem, I think just training that bottom half, the stronger half of the range of motion, with a lot more weight makes a lot of sense. My typical approach for this, to kind of get the best of both worlds, leave no stone unturned, is generally to do 1 or 2 sets through that full range of motion with a lighter weight. Usually works as a pretty good warm-up. I get a good pump going in the calves, and then I'll load it up and see what I can really do through that smaller range of motion. All right, so first set, I'm gonna do full range of motion. I got 2 45s per side on the leg press here. Let's see how many reps I can get. Okay, so with 2 45s per side, I was able to get about 17 reps or so before I feel like I was gonna start losing range of motion. I may have had a few reps in the tank there, but I didn't want to completely gas myself for the next set so you can see the difference. So 2 to 3 plates per side would probably be a good working weight range for me if I was going full range of motion. Now we're gonna see what I can handle just for the lengthened partials. All right, we've doubled the weight. We got 4 plates per side now. See how this feels for a lengthened partial. Again, I'm going from that full stretch, just trying to get up to about 90 degrees. Even just a handful of reps in at almost double the weight, I can tell that's a piece of cake and I'm gonna be going all day. We're gonna add some more. All right, 4 plates was too easy. Got 6 per side now. See how this feels for that length and partial. All right, it's about 14 or 15 reps, I think, of lengthened partials with 6 plates per side, including the weight of the empty machine here. I was using almost triple the weight for the bottom half of the range only versus what I could do through the entire range of motion. That's a huge discrepancy between full range strength and partial range strength. And you're not gonna see that on pretty much any other exercise. For example, comparing what I can do for a full range of motion curl versus just a bottom half curl, the weight is gonna be almost the same thing. Maybe I could get a couple more pounds on that lengthened partial, but you're not gonna see me doing partial range curls with triple the weight that I can do full range. So whenever we see that huge discrepancy between full range strength and partial strength, it's a good indicator that isolating that range of motion might be a good idea, so you're not understimulating that half of the range. Of all the exercises that I can think of doing in the gym, nothing makes as much sense, or is there as much of a discrepancy between full range and partial range strength as with the calf raise. But if I had to pick a close second, it would be the hip abduction machine that I'm gonna show you next. So we just saw on the calf raise how in the lengthened position or that bottom half of the rep, I was almost 3 times as strong as I was through that full range of motion. And we're gonna see something similar here on the seated hip abduction machine. The big problems I have with a lot of these machines is just that starting position alone tends to leave a lot of potential range of motion unloaded. So it's already kind of just working through that shortened half of the range of motion. So to address that problem first, you're gonna want some like blocks or pads or something like that that you can position in here so that now you're able to actually get your knees all the way together and get more range of motion out of the gate. From there, we're gonna do a comparison strength test, full range versus just that lengthened partial half. And so I'm gonna start relatively light here. This is like 60 pounds or so. But I think if I do enough reps and get all the way out every time, I'm still gonna get a decent challenge. So see what I can do. All right, so even just 15 reps with a relatively light weight there, you can see the beginning of the rep was not really challenging. Like just getting my knees apart wasn't hard, but it was becoming difficult to get all the way out, and I was starting to lose a little bit on the range of motion there at the end. So if I did want to challenge myself at end range in terms of that short position strength, that full contraction or squeeze, I could stay relatively light, but that's leaving all of this early range of motion pretty understimulated. So that was 60 pounds on this particular machine. Let's try to go from 60 to just full stack, see what happens. So it's gonna be similar to the calf raise, about triple the weight that I was doing. All right. All right, similar amount of reps, but just in that lengthened half of the range of motion, I was able to do about triple the weight. Again, the calf raise and the hip abduction machine, I think are two exercises where you're gonna see the absolute biggest difference between your full range strength and your lengthened partial strength. So I think they're the best candidate. I think they're some of the best candidates in the gym for lengthened partial training. Most other exercises, a bench press, a bicep curl, you're just not gonna see that sort of steep drop off in performance from lengthened half to shortened half. So I don't think it's something you need to do many places. And so I think it has become a bit over-popularized. People are now doing lengthened partials all over the place. But if I was gonna do them, and I do, these two exercises are the place for it. All right. In the last two exercises, we saw how I think that lengthened partial training is generally overhyped, but still I think makes a lot of sense in a few specific cases. I think the same can be said about isometric training for the average trainee. I think in the current fitness landscape, or in the current fitness space, we've seen isometric training become popularized and touted as a recovery hack, a way to treat tendinopathies, a way to improve tendon stiffness and performance. And while it has a place for all of those things, I think it's become over-popularized and overhyped. Overall, I don't think isometrics are that magical, and I think most people, for general training purposes, would benefit from just training conventionally through a full range of motion. It's gonna help you build mobility, strength, and give you a lot of the same benefits that isometrics are touted for. However, I do think there's, again, two exercises where isometrics work particularly well. Even for general trainees, I've seen a lot of great positive feedback from my clients on these two exercises. The first is the dip isometric. So everyone knows and loves full range of motion dips, but I think dips are a great candidate for end range holds. Now, you might be wondering why dips compared to any other exercise. And I think one of the reasons that it feels so good on dips is that full range, shoulder flexion and extension, we're gonna talk about overhead too, but full range shoulder extension is not something you get a ton of exposure to in most workouts. And the dip iso kind of loads you into that full range extension and allows you to accumulate quite a bit of time there. So I think it feels really, really great in terms of improving shoulder mobility and just gives you that exposure to that position that otherwise throughout the course of a full range of motion training program, you just might not be spending a ton of time there, or at least not enough to make really good improvements with your mobility. So anecdotally, this is one longer duration isometric hold I've given to a lot of clients who do them and immediately report, hey, my shoulders feel incredible. It's helped them make really good progress on overall shoulder mobility. So with a dip iso, I like it as a moderate load, kind of longer duration hold. So 30 to 60 seconds, really owning that end range, working on improving your shoulder extension range. So I'm gonna show you a sample set, kind of what it should look like. We're gonna slowly lower down, find that end range position, and then just hang out. Try to take some deep breaths. Try to keep everything else relatively relaxed. There can be a tendency to like hold your breath and really strain through some of these isos. Your blood pressure is gonna go through the roof, and you're probably gonna quit prematurely just because it feels so uncomfortable. So the more you can relax and breathe, I think the more you're gonna be able to load that target tissue here. Now, if you really push this close to failure, you're not gonna be able to get back up, and I'd be careful about how you get out of it. So I wouldn't just drop immediately. I wouldn't try to press out of it. I'd be ready to gradually use your feet to slowly offload. If you really push that hard, that sudden kind of jerk to offload or trying to like press back out of it awkwardly is not gonna feel great. So just be ready to be able to gradually unload somehow. I'll usually program that for 30 to 60 seconds at a time. 2 or 3 holds, I think, is great, especially if you're trying to make a lot of progress with your shoulder mobility. Or if you're already doing a lot of dips through a full range of motion, feel pretty good about your mobility, you can throw just like one longer hold at the end of your workout, and I think that feels pretty good too. Again, to be clear, I don't think that everyone needs to be doing dip isometric holds or doing all of the exercises that I'm showing in this video. But if you're struggling with shoulder mobility, I do think that that dip isometric is worth giving a shot. In addition to the dip iso, I think that a pullover isometric also feels fantastic for working on shoulder mobility. So that's where we're gonna go next. Just like the dip isometric feels really great on the shoulders, is a great way to improve that in-range shoulder extension. I think the pullover isometric is similar, but great for improving your overhead mobility. Now, of course, if you just do full range of motion pullovers or other full range of motion exercises that get your arms overhead, I do think you're gonna make a ton of progress there. But if you're someone who continues to struggle with overhead mobility and you want something a little bit extra, but you don't want to go down the long duration static stretching rabbit hole, I think that just adding some moderate range, in range isometrics, or moderate load in range isometrics is going to be a really good option for you. Similar to the dips, you can do a full workout of just iso holds. You can do 3 rounds of 30 to 60 second holds, or you can combine a few full range of motion sets with one kind of isometric finisher set. I think both are great options. Try them both out and see what you think. So first, I'll just remind you of the full range of motion dumbbell pullover. I like using 2 separate dumbbells and keeping my grip neutral. I think that feels a lot better than the heavy single dumbbell variation that some people will do, but up to you. Then keeping the arm straight, reaching all the way back, finding that stretch at the bottom, and then coming back up. So you can do those full range of motion reps, or what I think feels really great for improving overhead mobility is just reaching back, holding, and then learning to relax, take some deep breaths while maintaining tension in the shoulders. So I'm just gonna try to hang out here 30 to 60 seconds while breathing and keeping active tension versus just completely relaxing into a passive stretch. Like I mentioned with the dip holds, with any of these tough isometrics where you're getting pretty close to failure, I'd just be cautious how you exit them. Don't do anything abrupt. So try not to just drop the weights. Try not to strain yourself trying to lift out of it, but gradually release tension. With this one, what I'll generally do is I'll put my feet up and then slowly kind of lift the hips so then I can reach the dumbbells towards the floor and then let go. All right, so isometric holds, probably overpopularized, especially for the general trainee who's not using them for very specific rehab or sports performance purposes. But even if you're just training for general health and fitness, I think you might enjoy the dip hold and the pullover hold specifically. So if you have a leg extension machine, it's a great option for training the quads. But if you want to train a more stretched position, if you want to get your legs even further back or open up the hips to get a deeper stretch in the rectus femoris, I have a great variation for you. It's also a great leg extension option if you don't have access to a machine like this one. So whether you're using it as a leg extension replacement or in addition to the stimulus you can get in that more shortened range of motion with a leg extension, I think this cable variation I have next is going to be a great option for you to include in your program. I first started doing this leg extension variation in my home gym because they didn't have access to a traditional leg extension machine. But the more I did it, the more I really fell in love with it and realized just how heavy I could push. So to get started, you're just going to need some sort of cable cuff for your ankle. Now, this will make or break this exercise, so make sure you have a good one. You want one that has a hook or a loop on both sides. There are some cheaper cuffs out there that will Velcro, but then they only have one place for the carabiner to attach. And what happens when the exercise gets really heavy is eventually you'll just rip the cuff off of your leg, and that can end up being pretty dangerous. So make sure that it is a kind of dual clip cable cuff. You're also going to want one that's relatively thick and padded. If it's too narrow, just like a narrow band of polyester, it could just put a lot of pressure on your shin and be uncomfortable. So ideally you want one with kind of two places to clip the carabiner, and you want one that's relatively thick as well. If you have a good cuff like this one, we're going to start just by putting that down on your ankle and spin it around so that the hooks are on the back side. Next thing you're going to want to do is set up the cable pulley around the height of your knee to maybe the height of your hip. You can experiment with both. If it's set a little bit lower, it's going to be even more stretch focused, and it's going to get a little bit easier in the mid-range. If you set the cable a little bit higher around the height of your hip, the stretch will not be quite as intense, and you'll get a little bit more mid-range loading. Personally, because of how I see this complementing other forms of quad training or complementing a traditional leg extension machine, I prefer to keep this one kind of extra stretch focused. So I'm going to set this pulley up right at the height of my knee and focus there. I'm just going to show you full stacking the exercise here. That's 220. I think this is a 2-to-1 pulley, so that should be about 110 pounds of resistance. Get the carabiner clipped in, make sure it's attached to both. All right, once you're clipped in, you're gonna stand close to the cable, kick your leg back, and then hold on for some balance and support. And you're just gonna push yourself back into position there. Ideally, have your knee on some sort of mat or cushion. And kick the leg back. To troubleshoot some common issues that come up with this, I'm just going to walk you through where things can go wrong or potentially feel awkward, and what you can do about it. All right, so if this exercise is feeling awkward for you, sometimes it can be just how much your leg is kind of rotated. If you're rotated too far this way, it's going to feel like the cable is getting caught in your shirt or rubbing on your leg. And if you're rotated too far this way and there's a big gap there, it's going to feel just kind of unstable and maybe tug on your knee a little bit. So you want to make sure you're aligned just right so that that cable just lightly rubs on your leg, and maybe just kind of hold any loose clothing out of the way. So that cable's either very close or within an inch or so of your leg. The other thing that can start to not feel great with this exercise, if I get in really close to the machine here, the exercise is going to have a certain feel to it in terms of where it's challenging and where it's easiest, compared to if I slide way, way, way back, this is going to feel a lot different. So when you have that knee really far back, the cable is roughly perpendicular to the shin in the lengthened position, so it's going to be where it's most challenging. And then by the time I get all the way down, the cable is almost parallel with my shin, so I can hang out here all day. There's really no resistance in that position. So this is very, we'd call lengthened or stretched bias, where again, if I scoot way up, it's going to be a little bit more of an even challenge. That being said, I do generally prefer to make this a little bit more stretch focused, just because if you have a classic leg extension machine or doing other leg extension variations, you're probably already getting a good amount of that mid-range and shortened position strength. So I like to make this one kind of as stretchy as possible. A lot of the exercises I've talked about so far, I like because they have a little bit of extra credit, if you will, built in terms of improving your mobility. And this exercise for the triceps is no different. When it comes to tricep training, there's two main categories, I would say, and that's going to be variations where your arms are down by your sides, like a cable push down, or variations where your arms are overhead, like a triceps French press or something like that. This variation is of the more overhead variety, but compared to most others that you'll see, I think it's the most stable. We're going to stabilize the back of the arm, so you have really good stability and kind of leverage to work with. And it also gets you the absolute biggest stretch in the long head of the tricep and even into the teres. So I like this exercise not only because it's just a great overhead variation for triceps, which I think everyone should do some sort of overhead triceps variation, but I think it's great for getting a little bit of that extra credit work for shoulder mobility built into your triceps training. For this, all you're going to need is a wall and then some sort of mat or cushion for the elbow or the back of the arm. You're going to place this on the wall, reach up, drive that elbow into the pad, really lean into it. You're going to great stretch through here, and then do that overhead triceps extension. So overall, you'll find it's very similar to what you could do just with a standing overhead tricep extension, but by leaning into the wall, you're able to get that extra stretch, extra length, really open up your shoulders a lot. Everyone's familiar with the classic preacher curl, but if you lack a classic preacher station, you might be forced to do one on a bench like this. It can be awkward, force you to do one arm at a time, and sometimes you feel like that last bit of range of motion is being cut short unless you put a pad underneath the back of your arm. There's nothing wrong with that variation, but there is a variation of the preacher curl that I think is easier to set up in a wide range of environments and just feels really good. Like a lot of other exercises we've done today, it's also going to get you a really, really good stretch on the bicep. Now, to be clear, I don't think that you need to focus on getting the deepest stretch all the time. I'm not a big believer that stretch-mediated hypertrophy is going to be a valid phenomenon in every circumstance, but I do think it's one of those areas where it's good to just expose yourself to a wide variety of positions. It's good to train mobility a little bit. So even if it's not inherently optimal from a hypertrophy standpoint, I do think exploring some of these exercise variations that get you the deepest possible stretch are still worth your time. With the classic preacher curl on a preacher curl station, you have both arms kind of out in front of you. So you're loading the lengthened position of the bicep in terms of the bicep is at length during the toughest portion of the lift, but you're not creating much length through the bicep at the shoulder compared to variations like the Bayesian curl where your arms are behind you. However, the trade-off is that those variations where your arms are coming behind, those are often not supported or very stable, and some people find that they don't feel great on the shoulder for that reason. This variation kind of fixes both of those problems. We're going to use a foam roller behind the back, and I get into a glute bridge position, and then the back of the arms just above the elbow is supported by the bench there. So this is our position for that curl, sort of like a Bayesian curl and a preacher curl combined into one. So of course the glute bridge position that you're in there, it's not as easy as just laying on the ground, but I don't think it adds a substantial amount of challenge. It's not an exercise that's really about the glute bridge itself. It's just a way for you to get into that position. Overall, I think you'll find it's a really good bicep exercise. Crazy stretch, feels really stable, and it's surprisingly not that difficult to perform compared to the classic preacher curl, especially when I'm doing both arms at a time. My chest kind of pushing into the bench. Feels a little claustrophobic. Sometimes I get kind of out of breath, like it's harder to breathe in that position. Whereas this one, I just feel really, really stable and supported the whole time. Earlier you saw the cable leg extension, one of my favorite options for training the rectus femoris through its full length. Another great exercise for that is the sissy squat. Now, a lot of people look at this exercise and they see some newfangled exercise the kids are doing these days, but the truth is this exercise used to be quite popular and in fact was one of Tom Platt's, the quad father's, favorite quad exercises. So people have been doing this exercise for decades, fell out of favor for a while, and I see it making a resurgence or a comeback. It is a very difficult exercise. So for beginners, I recommend just doing a bodyweight version with something to hold on to for support. And then advanced athletes can do machine variations and loaded variations. But for that supported bodyweight version, I would just hold on to something like a squat rack or something like that. And essentially the goal here is to not bend at the hips at all and only bend at the knees. So basically doing a leg extension, but while standing up. So just bending at the knees, taking the knees down towards the ground, and then standing back up from there. That would be just the body weight variation. Now we can scale and make that easier and actually use a cable machine or a resistance band for some extra help and support. So if a body weight sissy squat is too challenging for you, then I would recommend using like a straight bar attachment or something like that on the cable system here, and you're just gonna hold on here to get a little bit of assistance so that you can just work on that movement pattern. From there, you're gonna use less and less help, and the exercise is going to get progressively harder. Once you can do the bodyweight version and you're ready to add some load, my favorite way to do that is with the landmine. So basically you just have a barbell like this, kind of shoved in either into a landmine attachment or just into any corner. You can make a corner out of like a bench or some weight, something like that. Just put some weight on it so that you can push into it a little bit and it's not gonna slide away from you. The last thing you wanna have happen is mid-rep, your whole support or anchor system slides away and you end up falling. The reason I like the landmine variation of this exercise so much is it takes the balance out of the equation a little bit. So I have really good support front to back, so I don't have to worry about falling over backwards or tipping over forwards, because this is relatively well supported and stabilized. The trickiest part of this variation though is figuring out exactly where to stand. So if you stand too close, once you get into that rep, you are gonna feel like falling over backwards. And if you're too far back, you're gonna just gonna feel kind of awkward. So you might have to play around with your starting position a little bit. But then this is the exercise here. Hips totally straight, only bending at the knees, and then coming back up. You can push really hard on this exercise, and a nice thing is you don't have to worry about getting stuck or crushed by a machine, because if you do get to the bottom and you can't get back up, all you have to do is bend the hips, stand up nice and easy, so you can confidently push this exercise super, super hard. One of my favorite categories of unusual or non-traditional lifts is everything with a zercher hold. So zercher squats, zercher lunges, zercher Jefferson curls. I think they're all really great options. But that being said, I think the Smith machine combined with the zercher position is a really killer combo that we just don't see being done a lot. I think a lot of times the zercher exercise variations are more popular in like strongman type circles, people who generally wouldn't be caught dead on a Smith machine. And then the Smith machine is more popular with like hypertrophy and bodybuilding and people who just want things to be very stable and comfortable so they can push as hard as possible. But I think there's good opportunity for overlap there, especially when we're talking about exercises where you're pushing the limits of your range of motion. I think when you are getting into some in ranges, having a little bit of extra stability, a little bit of wiggle room to kind of lean into it or lean out of it without worrying about falling over, I think that can help you squeeze a little bit more out of those types of exercises. So one crossover exercise I think that is worth incorporating is the Smith machine zercher Jefferson curl. So the nice thing about Smith machine exercises is there's a little bit less thinking involved. They're generally harder to screw up, just overall not as technical. That being said, some people approach the Jefferson curl more technically than others. Some people emphasize segmental motion of the spine, while others just care about kind of the global positions. That's an argument and a conversation for another video. But I'll say for me personally, I'm just going for more global flexion. I'm more worried about just getting into that end range, working on getting a deeper and deeper stretch than necessarily some of the articulation and upper back movement and things like that that sometimes people will focus on at the beginning. But that aside, I'm gonna curl the arms under the bar and just going all the way down, big stretch there at the bottom. And what I like about doing the exercise on the Smith is that if you imagine this was a free bar and I'm at the very bottom position, the force from that bar is going to be going just straight down, just pulling my elbows deeper towards the floor. But because this is stable and I can push into it and it's not going to go anywhere, I can kind of lean my body weight into it and create some forward pressure into the bar. And that's not just going to pull my shoulders closer to the ground, but it's going to compress me tighter and kind of it's going to kind of push my chest towards my thighs a little bit by rocking into it just a little bit. So overall, I think this is going to help you get into even deeper positions and just get a slightly different loading profile than with the standard barbell variation, all while generally feeling more stable and more secure throughout. I hope you enjoyed those exercises. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all of the weird, funky, or non-traditional exercises you might want to explore, but hopefully it will get you started down the right track and realizing that everything we do in the gym is made up. So go get out there, have some fun, be creative, try some of these out, and let me know which ones you like in the comments below.